Welcome to episode 5 in our series of 7 about the wonders of the world. Today we'll be covering the Colossus of Rhodes. A quick refresher on the 7 wonders of the ancient world. They were the 7 must-see sites around the Greek-speaking world, places you just had to go if you were traveling beyond the borders of your city-state. Today we'll be covering the only one of the 7 wonders which is located on an island, the Colossus of Rhodes. The story of the Colossus begins with the city of Rhodes itself. You can see it located in the lower right corner of the map, just off the coast of what is today Turkey. Rhodes was at a perfect spot for trade between Asia and Europe in the eastern Mediterranean, and the city-state grew fabulously wealthy off of trade from Cyprus, Tyre, and Egypt. However, wealth does tend to attract attention, and in the aftermath of the collapse of Alexander the Great's empire, there were a lot of people trying to get a little bit more. Now, in order to protect themselves from larger neighbors, Rhodes allied itself to Egypt, then ruled by the Ptolemaic dynasty. And so the king of Macedon, Demetrius, went in to both take the wealthy city of Rhodes and give a black eye to the Egyptians. Demetrius brought along a 9-story tall siege tower called the Breaker of Walls, a colossus in its own right of wood and iron, all covered in animal hides. And while Demetrius earned the nickname the Besieger of Cities during the battle, he did not earn the nickname the Taker of Cities. And after a year-long siege, Demetrius of Macedon was ultimately forced to withdraw, leaving even his colossal siege tower behind. The Rhodesians celebrated their victory and decided to thank the gods by building a gigantic statue to Helios, their name for the god Apollo. And they just happened to use the siege tower as a framework for a statue which would stand 110 feet tall, almost as tall as the Statue of Liberty. We don't know what the statue looked like, but we can guess based on stories, written records, and coins. It faced east, had a torch in one hand and a giant spear in the other. Philos wrote that so much bronze was used in its making that it created a shortage of the metal on the world market. And according to legends at the time, the statue was so big that its legs spread across the harbor, forcing ships to sail in between. In all probability, this is just fancy. In reality, the statue probably looked a bit more like this, standing on a pedestal on one side of the harbor. You'll also notice that this version of Apollo is wearing a crown made of jutting rays, a bit like the rays of the sun. It's actually notable that when Apollo was painted, he was often shown with what we would today call a halo representing the sun. And later Christian artists would borrow the halo when they were painting pictures of Jesus Christ and the saints. For the ships arriving in Rhodes, the gleaming statue must have been an amazing sight. Unfortunately, the Colossus of Rhodes had the shortest reign of any of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It stood from only 280 BC to about 230 BC when an earthquake caused it to snap off at the knees. The city fathers of Rhodes consulted an oracle asking if it should be rebuilt, and the oracle answered in the negative. So the Colossus of Rhodes was allowed to simply remain there on the beach. However, even though it was a ruin in its own time, the Colossus of Rhodes continued to be a major tourist draw. People would peer into the empty limbs and arms to see the huge bronze caverns within, and grown men would try to wrap their arms around the thumb of the Colossus. Many of them could not because it was so big. And the ruins of the Colossus remained at Rhodes for another 900 years, until the Umayyad Caliphate invaded Rhodes. And according to tradition, a merchant from Odessa purchased all of the bronze and sent it back home on dozens of ships, and once it arrived there, he had to unload it onto 1,000 camels to move all of the bronze back to his hometown, and there he proceeded to melt the bronze down into coins, religious artifacts, and weapons. So the Colossus may very well still be around in the form of copper wiring or even pennies in your pocket. And that wraps things up for the Colossus of Rhodes. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed what you saw, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. If you've got anything to say, please leave it in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining me, and I want to wish you a happy start to the year 2009.